Please help me welcome to the stage Joy Langford and Ian Penner.
Good morning to all of the early morning risers. I am Joy Langford. I am an elected official. I am the Director of Groundwater for LA County, and I also serve as the Chief Strategy Officer for Arches H2, California's hydrogen infrastructure hub. And today, it is my privilege to introduce Ethan Penner, unquestionably one of the most influential figures in modern finance, a man whose innovations have changed the way capital flows around the world. After being among those who pioneered the home mortgage-backed securities market that allowed for broader access to home ownership, Ethan is widely recognized as a creator of the commercial mortgage-backed securities market and development that transformed real estate finance and expanded opportunities for real estate owners and investors. But Ethan is more than just a financial innovator. He is a respected author, educator, and thought leader who brings a rare blend of market insight and philosophical perspective. His work challenges us to think not only about how we invest, but why, and what responsibility finance has to society at large. His books are often called philosophical guides of living a righteous and fulfilling life, an importance of prayer and connection to one's highest powers. Ethan is a man who makes connections, as I well know, tying things together logically and seeing relationships that others might not see. As we look ahead at the forces shaping business, housing, and markets for the decades to come, there's no better guide to help us understand both the opportunities and the risks that lie ahead. Please help me welcome Ethan Penner.
Thanks, Joy.
Yeah.
I got the better view. I've got the ocean over there, too.
Right? This is just gorgeous down here. Out of the many financial conferences that I've been able to lecture.
Yeah, well, like I told you, this is where I started my career. I worked at a little savings and loan in Huntington Beach when I got out of college, so it's kind of fun to come back to Huntington Beach.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into history and lessons learned. Looking back, where were your original goals in creating first home mortgage-backed securities and next commercial mortgage-backs? And what did that reality, how did it diverge your intentions?
Look, I think that maybe the greatest, and this, I don't think it's an exaggeration to suggest that perhaps the greatest foundational strength that differentiates American economics from other countries is our home mortgage system. Our home mortgage system allows for a leveraging of the house that both gives more people access to home ownership, and I think government plays a big part in that. The Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae systems allow for just better, more efficient, and more broad home ownership. I think the private, non-government mortgage-backed securities market also brings more capital to the market through bond buyers, which it just facilitates a stronger economy and broader home ownership, which are both important. On the commercial mortgage-backed security side, I created that industry in 1992 and 1993 in a moment of crisis when traditional lenders abandoned commercial real estate. And it was really about solving an existential problem for one of the largest industries in our country. Without that solution, our economy was in very bad shape because, commercial real estate is such a huge part of our society. And I think today, if you just kind of look at where we are today, commercial real estate is in trouble. And I think that there's a lot of concealed losses on the books of lenders, on the books of equity holders. And I think that if those losses become realized, which I think there's a fairly strong likelihood they will, it's going to have a very negative impact on our economy.
If you had a crystal ball and you could look back and then look into the future, what do you think we should have done differently, like in the 90s, early 2000s? You know, obviously a lot of progress was made in home lending during that time, but as we look back, we're seeing some blowback.
Well, I think that the story of 2008, you know, we obviously had the problem centered in the subprime mortgage crisis, and there was just a bad idea that everyone deserved to own a home. The reality is that there's no such thing as entitlements in life. You know, we use the word entitlements in government, and that's a business I'm now going into, government. And I think that nothing's free, and there are no entitlements. The reality is that everything costs, and there's hidden costs. So there were hidden costs associated with putting people into homes and asking them to repay mortgages that they were unable to do. And government policy, when it's informed by people who don't understand commerce and the laws of economics and finance, well, the hidden costs are hidden to them and ultimately show up in a very surprising way, which happened in 2008.
So let's move on into the risk and resilience. How do we compare today's mortgage market and credit market than everything that led up to like 2008? Or have the same risk simply by mitigating into new areas like private credit and fintech lending? I mean, it's completely different. If you look at the large mortgage-backed companies that are doing large real estate deals as opposed to REITs, where's the risk and resilience and the equilibrium in that?
I think that lending is a very complex, much more complex business than people give it credit for.
Yeah.
I think that this audience has probably been exposed to this concept of private credit in a way that no prior generation has been, right? The business of lending had been the domain of banks and insurance companies for most of history, most of modern history. And the idea of non-bank, non-insurance company lending is a rather new phenomenon that kind of came in coincident with the beginning of my career and started, as you suggest, on the home mortgage side and has now expanded to many other areas. And now we call this sector of finance private credit to kind of reference non-bank lending and non-insurance company lending. The thing is that banks and insurance companies were built and chartered and allowed to run leverage with subsidized liabilities in a manner that I think was intelligently designed to goose the economy, right? If you think about what a bank is, it's really just the pooling of the collective guarantees of our society in the form of deposit insurance, because in the end, we all back bank deposits. It's a taxpayer-backed system. And the pooling of that taxpayer backing allows for lower cost liabilities, and therefore that lower cost gets passed on to borrowers in the form of a lower cost loan.
Right.
So it's really the socialization of risk for the benefit of the individual, the collective guarantee for the benefit of the individual. And that's the story of bank lending and insurance company lending. I'm one of the pioneers of private credit, but I'm not so sure I love private credit as an investment. There's a couple things about private credit that generally rub me the wrong way. One is you're not getting the benefit of this pooled leverage system that banks and insurance companies are structured as, and as a result, you're generally taking more risk because your cost of funds are higher than a bank's or an insurance company. So that's a problem. And then secondarily, in order to kind of compensate for that, you try to leverage your loan. So private credit lenders are generally quite highly leveraged themselves. And I don't think people understand that. So you take a loan that may be a whatever percent loan to value, and then you borrow against that loan so that you're now in a highly leveraged position. And if things do go bad and you've underwritten the credit poorly or the economy turns down, your loan risk is quite high, much higher than it should be for the risk reward you're taking in that debt position. So I don't generally love private credit. I also think the last thing I'm going to mention about private credit for everyone to consider is if you're a lender, you're taking less return for presumably less risk. And the thinking is that there's all that equity that's junior to your position that needs to be wiped out if things go bad before you lose. But if that happens, then you have to have the ability to foreclose, which means you have to have the ability to own the collateral. If the collateral is an operating company, so a lot of private credit lends to operating companies. Lenders don't know how to operate those private companies, right? They're not operators. So I believe if you don't have the ability to foreclose, then you don't have the ability to protect your downside, which means you shouldn't be in the lending business in the first place.
So then that brings the million-dollar question: where are the opportunities right now for institutional and individual investors in, you know, the mortgage market right now?
Well, I think in general, in credit, the word opportunity and credit generally means distressed, okay? That's where opportunities in credit generally lie. So finding distress, finding loans and lenders that made mistakes, that may be over-leveraged, that don't have the ability to foreclose because they don't have the ability to take over that collateral and are willing to sell it at a considerable discount or sell the loan and then have you take over the business of foreclosing. But I think the only consistent opportunity in credit is in the distress side of that.
Yeah, yeah. So what about the future of housing finance? What do you see as a solution for the younger generations? We all know that two educated family home, young couple trying to make it right out of college, the American dream is, you know, a little bit far out of reach for them right now.
Well, there's a lot to say about that in a limited amount of time, Joy. I guess I would say that the government, if we can have continued well-run Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac system, I think that's very helpful to the economy and helpful to first-time home buyers as well. We've had, in my career alone, times when that system worked extremely well, and then times where that system did not work so well, when I think government wanted to change its policy and exert kind of a more broadened home ownership effort by making standards lax and creating, you know, what I would say bad loans. So I think that government programs that are well run, where credit's not sacrificed, is a good thing. I think that one of the kind of, you know, right now we have a national housing market that I would say is stuck, and it's stuck for a couple of reasons. One is because interest rates went up so dramatically, right? So if you go back 3 years ago, I'm told that more than 80% of homeowners refinance their homes with fixed rate loans under 3%. And so you can't replace that today, right? So today, you know, we live in a country where people move more than any place in the history of the world. We're movers. Americans are movers. But right now, people don't move because they have their cost of owning their house is a 3% or lower fixed rate mortgage, and they can't replace it. If they sold that house and moved somewhere else, and they would replace it with a 5 or 6% mortgage, which would roughly double their cost of housing. And so people are not selling. And when people are not selling, there's not much to buy, and prices are artificially high as a result of that. I would make one modification to the mortgage business. I would make the mortgage either assumable, or I would make the mortgage portable, meaning if I sold my house to you and I have a mortgage on my house, I have 6 months perhaps to buy another house, and that mortgage travels with me to my new house. And that would open up the mortgage market and the housing market from where it is today, which is stuck.
So we're here at Future Proof, and we are obviously talking about new trends. What technologies like blockchain, tokenization, artificial intelligence might be able to help push the housing market forward, in your opinion?
Well, I think that technology creates better transparency and greater efficiency. So that generally makes things better, more affordable, less risk of fraud, which is a cost in the end. And so I'm a big fan of those things, transparency and efficiency. And as someone who's now looking to go into government, I will definitely introduce blockchain and the transparencies that come with that to everything in government. But I think it's definitely going to play a role in housing. I don't think it's a game-changing role, perhaps as people think, but I definitely think in housing and real estate, there is definitely room for transparency and anti-fraud technology.
So you just made reference to government and political aspirations. You are running to become California's next governor.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
I am. People say I'm crazy.
I was going to ask you, you know, as I kind of get it as someone who came from the same type of mortgage background, who decided to run for politics and actually run as well. But what are your reasons for getting into it, even though I've tried, as many others have, to implore you that it's not as fun as it looks?
Well, I'm not going into it for fun, that's for sure. I just feel that our state, and I guess I could speak, there's many people that are here from California, but there are many people who are from other places. And what I have to say is certainly applicable to California, but I think perhaps there's more broad application to it. California has been mismanaged to a level that is shocking to me. I first came to California as a young boy in the 1970s, and I worked here, as I said, in Huntington Beach in the early 80s. I've been living in California most of my adult life, and I've seen California go from the California of the songs of the Beach Boys and the song California Dreaming, and it's a dreamy place. I mean, just look here. It's an amazing, amazing place. And yet, somehow, through mismanagement that's hard to actually fathom, we find ourselves 50th, which is shocking for me to even say this, but 50th out of 50 states in America in almost every important metric that you would kind of judge a society. We're 50th in unemployment. We are 50th in poverty. We're 50th in homelessness. We're 50th in tax friendliness. We repel businesses, we repel producers from this state because of our unfriendly business environment, which starts with our tax policy. We are 50th, and we've been 50th for 5 straight years in net migration, which means people are preferring to live in every single state in this country ahead of ours. Now, how could that be? Just look here. How bad of a manager do you have to be to ruin this, right? To make this 50th in anything. So to me, I just felt compelled that somebody has to stand up and do something, because I'm a student of history. I'm a student of philosophy, as you mentioned. I loved reading Atlas Shrugged when I was a young man, and Atlas Shrugged, the author, and if you haven't read it, I highly recommend reading it. Although it is 1,000 pages, it's actually a page turner too, which is rare. And Ayn Rand forecasts a time when producers would leave a society and be driven out by a taker mentality that overcame the kind of government, and ultimately there would be more takers or dependents than there were producers in a society, and they would continue to vote for increasingly taker policies. We're seeing that play out in California, and we're deep into that. And I felt that we don't have much time to fix that. So that's why I'm doing this. I have 5 children. I love this state and I love this country. And I don't believe this country can survive with a dysfunctional California. We're getting a dysfunctional New York, it seems. And so I think that, you know, all of my life, New York and California have been, and that's where I've spent most of my life, between New York and California. I grew up in New York. I just think this country with a dysfunctional New York and a dysfunctional California is not all, it will definitely not be all that it needs to be to serve us and to make this a wonderful country. So to me, that's why I'm doing it.
So what are some of the changes? I mean, there's probably a whole list of...
Yeah, I mean, when you get to be 50th and all those things, there's more than one thing that needs to be repaired, right? But I think you start off with the low-hanging fruit. I mean, I come from the world of business. I understand how important it is to be inspirational to people, right? And I think that we have an anti-inspirational society in California for sure. And so policies that, you know, to me, this country was founded on 2 basic principles: social mobility, which is what we call the American dream. I was born poor. I believed in the American dream. It served me. It's not there for people today, or people don't believe it's there. And I think that fixing that is very important. I think respect for private property rights and having private property rights was also the other main foundation of our country. And I see that less so today than it's ever been. I think that private property rights are under attack. So those things inform, to me, most policies that I would think about. And I think tax changes are the #1 thing that needs to happen, because they grab people's attention. They tell producers, they tell dreamers, they tell business owners, this is a place for you. We're not going to penalize you for success. We're not going to penalize you for your ambitions, and we're not going to vilify you for success. We're not going to take away your private property. So I will introduce a new tax policy. I plan to introduce it on national TV next week. And it will be a tax policy that I believe makes us more tax-friendly than Texas or Florida. So we're going to go from 50th to the very top of the list in the 50 states. And then I think after that, you know, there's a whole litany of changes that need to occur that are consistent with those ideologies. But I think this state has the bones. Like I became a real estate person from a financial person. And what I learned, you know, you hear people say this if you're around real estate people, when they look at a building that's not doing so well, and they say, well, the bones are good, which means that you can invest money in that kind of a property because the fundamental, the location, the structure, it's sound, and it will return value if you invest in it. Sometimes the bones are not so good, and it's not worthy of investment. This state, the bones are as good as they could be. This is the best real estate in the world, California, and it can be fixed and turned around very quickly, and I believe I will do that.
You know, having been in politics for the last 5 years or so, actually before that, when I was working at the California legislature, you find that many of the people who are chosen to serve actually don't know anything about what they are serving. And a lot of times that takes people who've been in business. But they've made it so that a lot of people who've been in business don't want to go into politics.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think that everyone I know is not willing to do what I'm doing. Right. And I always, when I meet people who are from my world, who I admire, I always say to them, look, if you'll do this, I'll step aside and just support you, because that would be a much better outcome for me. I'm not looking to be governor of California. I'm looking to see this state and our society turn in the right direction. But nobody else is running who I believe is qualified to do this job. And to your point, I think that's been going on for too long. I think that career politicians are not well suited for leading our society. They don't know our society. They don't understand. So one of the things I was talking to somebody recently about is every politician talks about growth. Like, my goal is to bring growth. And they have no idea what they're talking about. Like, they've never been an economic person. They've never run a business or built a business, or in many of their cases, never even applied for a job outside of government. They're just cashing government checks. Very much like somebody receiving welfare. I mean, they're just receiving welfare checks working in the government. So they have no idea, no concept of what it means to create growth. I think that they are like praying for growth, like maybe ancient people used to pray to the gods of rain for rain. They're praying for growth to show up as though some, asking for it, some miracle will occur. But growth can't come when your environment and your economy is structured in a way that repels business, that punishes ambition and punishes success, because people can move, right? So if you're even though you're in a beautiful state like California, if your tax policies are not as friendly as Texas is, for example, or your tort situation is overly penal and you're allowing for frivolous lawsuits to chip away at businesses, which we have in California, or you have bureaucratic red tape that is making it impossible to structure a business or an investment or build an apartment building, which is why, by the way, our cost of building an apartment unit is $110,000 more here than anywhere else. It's just bureaucratic red tape. So when you are the same politicians who have embraced all of these anti-business policies, and then you say, well, I'm going to bring growth. Like, what are you talking about? Like, what world are you coming from?
Right. Any further seeds you want to plant with our audience here on anything, from government to living right to making a difference?
So you mentioned that I'm an author. I wrote 2 books in the last few years. One is called Greatness is a Choice, and the other, which just came out a month ago, is called Awareness in Prayer. I do believe that many of the foundations of living right can be found in those books. I'm very proud of those books. I feel that they were inspired. I think that I would also say that every problem can be solved. And we in our society, I think it's true in California, I see it every day as I talk to people in California, but I think it's true in the United States as well. We're highly skeptical about our lives, and our expectations and even our dreams we've allowed them to be squashed by, I don't know, just society and bad political leadership, I think. A divisive society that's kind of been exacerbated by the political divide of the 2 parties. I'm running as an independent, really in opposition to that divisiveness. So I think that the normal person, the decent person, the person who represents what I would say the 80 or 90% majority of us, don't find today's society to be kind of working for us, and we've become disheartened and lonely. And I guess I would say that we shouldn't be, because we are the majority. And we could, if we band together and make our demands known. And right now the political landscape is controlled by the extremes, because we're not speaking. The people in the middle are not speaking. I'm running as a voice for those people.
Well, audience, please give it up for Ethan Penner.